She was sitting right across from me, tears pouring down her face, convinced that the relationship was over, that she had crossed the line, and by the time she got home, he'd be gone. What was going on? They had an argument the night before, and she was convinced that she was just too much and he had enough. What I'm talking about is something we can often do, the story we tell ourselves. I'm Robyn Coffman. I'm a board-certified Christian counselor with 30 years in private practice. And what I want to describe today are two types of blind spots that could be wreaking havoc on your peace and in your relationships. The first blind spot is assuming. When we assume, we are basically filling in the blanks without checking for evidence. We are making a conclusion without truly testing the waters. When we do this, it's usually rooted in some kind of fear. That fear blocks us from seeing what's really happening. We assign meaning without ever truly checking it out. Assuming says, oh, I already know how this is going to end. I already know what's going to happen next. With such certainty, but without truly knowing. We're so locked in on the meaning or translation we've assigned that we have no openness to consider. There could be other options, other things in play. We have no curiosity. We've already filled in all the gaps with what we think we've convinced ourselves is true. How this shows up? You have a friend who doesn't text you back, leaves you on red, and you just assume they're upset with you. When later you find out, oh, their phone ran out of battery, or they had to go pick up the kids and forgot. Had nothing to do with how they felt about you, but you already assigned meaning that you must have crossed the line and you upset the relationship. Or if a tone shifts in a conversation, you automatically make conclusions that they didn't like what you said, or you said something wrong, or like the case in my client, you're just too much for them. Or it could be they were distracted by someone walking behind them, or they remembered something that made them lose focus with you. These are assumptions we make unconsciously, and they can be totally unfounded. And it can affect our relationship with God too. We can assume he feels a certain way about us, that he's disappointed with us, that his grace can't extend as far as our worst mistake, our worst sin. These are assumptions that are not based on truth, yet we live as if they are. How do you know if you're making assumptions? Oftentimes, whether you say it out loud or in your head, you're thinking something like, oh, I know what they meant by that. Or, I know how they really think about me. Or, I know how this is going to go. That is an unchallenged assumption. And most of the time, it doesn't pan out that way. So if you want to work on challenging your blind spots of assumptions, this is my question for you. Where in your life are you filling in blanks that haven't actually been written yet? Where are you making conclusions without testing them? If you want to break the habit of assuming, check it out. Simply check out what you're concluding. Ask the person, hey, you know what? I'm thinking you're upset at me. Am I accurate in that? Or for my client, it was asking her to courageously text her husband while we were in session and ask, can you tell me what you're feeling right now about me and our relationship? Check it out. Get real data and then make your next decision based on that fact, not the evidence you've convinced yourself in your head that's gone unchecked. So when it comes to assuming, break that blind spot by checking it out. Okay, blind spot number 2, expecting. When we expect something, what we're really doing is writing a script in our head that no one else has read and expecting a certain outcome. I remember having a client once so devastated after her milestone birthday, because in her head she had pictured that her family and friends were going to surprise her and throw a great party, and there'd be cake and there'd be dancing and just a good night of fun. And her birthday came and went. She was so disappointed and devastated. And so I asked her, what happened? Why couldn't they do it? And she just kind of looked at me, and then it clicked. Did you tell them that's what you'd like for your birthday? And that was the aha moment. She had this all played out in her mind, but she had never asked for what she wanted. That was a setup that could have been avoided. What we're talking about is unspoken expectations, because they're rarely challenged, they're rarely realistic, and they set us up to be in a real bind and cause friction in our relationships. When we don't name what we expect, we set ourselves up for major disappointment. Whereas in assuming, we're coming from a place of like, oh, I already know. But with expectations, we actually feel owed. That's what's so painful about unspoken expectations. We get locked in on an outcome that no one else knows about. We can even have unspoken expectations toward ourselves that causes us harm, where we feel like, gosh, I've been at it so long, I should have this outcome by now. I should have or see this result. And we can get on ourselves and beat ourselves up and be critical and judgmental, when we might not have challenged that expectation to see if it was realistic. Based on all the other things going in our lives, was this a realistic setup for me, or was it really set up to fail? This can really play out in our relationship with God too. We can unconsciously have this equation, this unspoken agreement where we say, hey, done this, I've been good for this long, I've been disciplined, I've prayed, I've fill in the blank, therefore God, show up for me in this way. I've been faithful, so I would like to cash in on that and have your favor be upon me. Yes, he wants us to be faithful, but it's not a transaction with him in a tit for tat. He wants something much deeper than that. And we can really trip ourselves up, feeling like we're not enough or we need to do more, when that's not at all what he expects from us, yet we expect that kind of relationship from him. What unspoken expectations might sound like in your head is when you say things like, well, they should just know. I shouldn't have to ask. I've given so much, they should blank. Here's something you can reflect on. What unspoken expectation have you been holding over another person that you've never shared and they've never agreed to? I imagine it's creating a lot of pressure on them and in your relationship. Take some time to think about that. And if you want to break your habit of unspoken expectations, this blind spot that is keeping you stuck, this is what you need to do next. Speak it out. Speak out what you want. Say what you need. Ask for what you need. Without others knowing, that's unfair to them and sets you up for disappointment. So for assuming, we want to check it out. For expecting, we want to speak it out. As the saying goes, clear is kind. So if you've seen yourself in either of these, stay with me. The next two blind spots I'm going to share are about how we distort our vision in completely opposite directions. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. And if you want to catch up on all 10, check out this video.